My name is Bianca Mauro from BRM Production Management, and this is the wonderful Taryn Longo from the Mastery Studio. And after our last conversation, which was about reintegration, we received a comment that I think it's important to address. So this comment came in thanking us for the videos, but then saying, what I find missing is how to address this loss of ours. We both work in industries that are not reopening anytime soon. The uncertainty of the future of outdoor shows and concerts is our new reality. And I find myself torn between abandon, rebuild, or retool. Now, I know this extends way beyond the concert and live shows industries. And so Taryn and I want to talk about this today in a larger application, because there are a lot of industries, small businesses, and otherwise that will not be able to return to business as usual right away or anytime soon.
Correct. Is that my cue?
No.
Taryn, speak now.
Very dramatic pause.
I'm like, oh, me? Yeah.
So I think what this person is also trying to say, and it's something that you and I have both talked about a lot, is that the loss isn't, yes, it's professional, but what we do is so deeply tied to who we are that what appears as a professional loss is actually a deeply personal sense of, grieving or confusion or where do I go from here for a lot of people. Is that how you'd interpret it? Or
yeah, I think for a lot of people, I don't think for everybody. And I think that if it's not that for somebody, that they probably have a different struggle going on, because most people that I know who have the privilege of having this struggle they struggle with what is their purpose and are they doing the work that they really want to be doing. And I think some of us have businesses that we are very intertwined with. I know that the work that I do is very intertwined with who I am. I wouldn't say I identify that way. Like, I definitely have enough separation, I think, from who I perceive myself to be and the work that I do, but still my work is ingrained in who I am. And I feel like there are a lot of small business owners whose businesses are a part of their identity.
I mean, I'm guilty of that. I'm completely guilty of that.
Yeah. And I think that's really normal, because especially as a small business owner, you put so many hours and so much of your existence into building and maintaining and growing your business. So, and small businesses have other people involved in them too, right? There's like your employees, your contractors, your vendors, all of these different people, and like you're constantly interfacing with all of these people. So there's just been like a lot of changes, obviously. And I do think that right now there's a lot of confusion as to how to re-emerge from this forced pause and forced pullback. Then how do you re-emerge? And it's probably brought up a lot of existential questions for people, for not for everybody, but for some people, and a lot of questioning around how do I proceed if my industry is completely changed, or the landscape for my business is completely different, or what I think I'm seeing a lot of and you're experiencing a lot of is like, well, I'm different. This changed me, and so now I don't know how I want to reemerge from all of it. So that's a great example, because I can tell you that you don't want to reemerge into your business life where your phone is always ringing like that and you have no moments to yourself.
But why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I just want to go back to that just the way it was? So peaceful.
You don't want to just put out fires for 14 hours straight and then maybe sleep a little bit and go right back into it?
Not. Maybe not. I find my best firefighting is done when I have a break between fires.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you're an excellent firefighter. I don't know if you have to live inside the heat of the fire all the time.
For
And that's
anyone
really,
who doesn't know me personally, this is figurative.
she's not an actual firefighter.
No,
Just
nope.
a really high level problem solver. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it's interesting, like the way that the question is phrased. I really love the words that she used. And I also want to reframe it a little bit because it's like, what did she say? What was it?
The first one was abandon,
Abandon, rebuild, and
rebuild, or retool.
so like abandon, I get that feeling. Like, do I just like say, screw all of this? Like there's nothing there for me. But I would say letting go is better than abandon because that's part of the grieving process, right? And that's part of what is actually happening. There might be pieces of your work that you have to let go of because maybe it won't come back in the same form, at least for a little while. Most likely at some point in the future, things will be coming back in the same form that they were before, like in terms of live events. We're not going to go the rest of human existence without live events, you know? It's easy to feel that way, but that's not going to happen. Like it might be a stretch of time that feels like forever that we're not going to have live events, but we will have them back at some point. So, but in the immediate, there's this sense of like, do I abandon what I have built? It might be more, well, what do I need to let go of? What is my truth around all of this? And the truth means the reality in which we live in. Like sometimes it's not what we want, but the truth is that something has to be let go of. Or internally, it is our truth to let go of that because it no longer is in alignment with us, or it no longer feels right. It's not something we want to try to fit back in with. I think that there's a lot of, we have to realize that when we go through immense trauma, and this time we are currently in is a time of trauma, we potentially haven't even hit the time where the post-traumatic stress is going to kick in. Right now, we're still in the trauma unfolding, and it changes us. And so we might not be it's like maybe before there was like a round peg fitting into a round hole, right? And now we're like a square peg or a diamond shaped, and we like can't fit into the same puzzle piece that we were before, you know? So we have to have some courage to look within ourselves and to know how to check in with ourselves and just say like, no, this doesn't feel right anymore. I think I need to let go of the form that my business was in or my work was in. And I need to figure some stuff out to rebuild and retool what it is that I'm doing. So to me, those three things are not separate choices, but rather three different components of a very important process of reemerging after a time of trauma.
Okay. For those who are, going through that, and myself included, absolutely trying to figure out how to reemerge and sort of in what form, and knowing that going back to exactly what we were doing is no longer the right fit, but not losing the mission of what we were doing. And I guess that's probably what the woman who commented saw as retooling.
Yeah, exactly.
For those who are going through that, I know that it can be, there's more questions than answers for sure.
Always.
And
Always.
and it's like jumping off a cliff because you put everything you had into building something for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden you're faced with this, well, now what? And and for me it almost feels like not starting from scratch by any means, but it's a screwed up word to use for this, and I know this comes from a place of privilege, and I don't mean it negatively, but almost an opportunity to reassess because of this forced pause.
Absolutely. Listen, like, I don't think that ignoring the fact that for many people it's an opportunity to rebuild and retool is like, if we dismiss that reality, that doesn't help the inequality. You know what I mean? Like they're sort of two separate things in a certain way. I think it's just being able to address that there are a lot of people who are not able to be in this situation, and that is not okay in and of itself. And that actually kind of is where I stand with the retooling and the rebuilding. To me, and this is my personal thing, and I realize this is not always even possible across the board, but for me, I would hope that when people are retooling and rebuilding and figuring out what their truth is and what they want to do in this world and how they can retool their businesses, that is kept in mind. It's going to be different for everybody, but like this entire situation has exposed enormous disparities within our society. So are there ways that our work and our businesses can help support some movement in that, in a change direction for that? You know, like, is there something that we can contribute as business owners? You know, and I don't have those answers, and it's different for everybody, but I know that I'm doing my own soul searching and my own deep inquiry around what I can really do in my work to contribute to some social change in the long run, and how my business can be retooled to better serve the collective, you know. And again, like, not everyone maybe can go there, and that's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but if this time has shown us anything, it's that there's some major issues which we should have already known, but there's like some major issues that we're being exposed to, and what can we do about it is an important question that each of us should ask.
And while I completely agree with that, I know that there are probably a lot of people who aren't even ready to ask that question yet, because they're still focused on this sense that what they had and what they built has been taken away from them through no fault of their own. And for those folks who are feeling somewhat helpless right now, I'm not sure if you have anything in your incredibly large repertoire to offer for advice, as far as like, if you're in that spot and you feel like everything you built has been taken away and you're not sure, you know, no one knows, there's no date on when things are going to return to something similar as before, as far as gatherings, as far as close contact with other people. For folks who are sitting there and they are feeling at a loss and feeling that loss of everything that they built, I just don't know if there's anything to offer as far as proactive tools they can use to start to brainstorm how can I change, what would be right for me, what might be right for my business.
Yeah. First, definitely accepting that things have shifted and that things are different, and allowing yourself to sit a little bit in that grief and feel the feelings around it. Not to sound cheesy, but truly, because if we don't feel what it is we're feeling, then we don't get the information we need for how to move forward. We need to sit with those feelings and allow them to like percolate a little bit, and allow us to get through a few layers of them to get to the deeper truth, because the deeper truth is often underneath our emotional response. So we need to allow ourselves to have that emotional response before we can really get to our deeper truth sometimes. Otherwise, there's this contraction in our system that sort of keeps us from even going there, and keeps us from even being able to think super creatively, because we don't have that part of access to our brain when we're in this kind of like contracted, dissociated place. So allowing ourselves to sit and feel the grief of losing what was, and go through some of the turmoil of that. I mean, it's not, I think that we want answers that are going to save us from the pain of it. Like it's sort of, I get asked these questions a lot, and there's like two different directions that I can go in. One is like, how can you self-soothe and sort of self-regulate and make yourself feel better when you're feeling hard stuff? But then there's also the direction of, and if you really, really want to grow and you really want to figure some shit out, you probably should be focusing on allowing yourself to go through that turmoil. to have a really hard time. Of course, you want to take care of yourself. I went through that yesterday, and I'm totally fine sharing that. Like yesterday, I can feel the growing pains that I'm going through. You know, I can feel like there's usually reasons that we keep ourselves or have kept ourselves from going to the next level, for instance, in our work, or shifting courses and going into a different version of our work or something like that. There's usually some kind of stopping point because of past trauma, or because of anxiety, or because of all these different things that can come up, right? Past experiences usually. So when we start to grow in those directions, it can be really, really painful. And so I spent the day working with that and processing the stuff that was coming up. And sometimes that includes things that like help me feel better, you know, like music or playing music, or like certain books or certain activities that help me to feel more regulated as the turmoil is happening. But I'm doing it in order to keep it, I'm not sure if this is going to make sense, but I'm doing the self-soothing and the self-regulating just enough to help keep me contained while not dissociating from the process I'm in.
Right. No, that completely makes sense. Yeah.
And I think that that's what I would encourage people to do. And if we're speaking to people who are small business owners and stuff, and to some level you have your leaders to some extent, even if it's just like you're like, not even just, but if you're community leaders, or you're leaders of your employees, or you're just a leader of your own self in the work that you do, right? Like you're in a position where you have to self-lead, like somebody's not necessarily telling you what to do or not to do. So by the nature of being in that position, then you kind of have to like go through these difficult times of change and figuring out, do I want to go in this direction? No. Do I want to go in that direction? No. Like, how does this feel? How does that feel? And what does this loss feel like? I mean, it's a lot to process and a lot to do, or a lot to sit with rather. But if we don't sit with it, then we don't actually get the information that we need of how to move forward. We don't get to that truth, and we end up on this hamster wheel. We end up with a different version of the same.
No more hamster wheel. No more hamster wheel. No more.
No more wheel.
No more wheel. Well, I know that you have a packed schedule today, and our primary point was to talk about that one comment that we got. So thank you so much for sending that in. Thank you, Taryn, for lending us your giant brain. And and we're going to continue having these conversations until it doesn't feel right anymore. So,
yeah. And can people keep asking those questions or follow-up questions, anything? It's actually, I really like that. It's really helpful.
I do too. And you know, it makes me feel right to get to address something that someone specifically asked, more than, not that I don't just like talking to you.
You talk to me all the time.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.